Greetings, my comrades and citizens. I'm glad to see you guys again. Welcome to my channel. If you're brand new here, my name is Cadet Second Lieutenant Valley, but you can just call me Cadet for short. So I wanted to give back to my community since you guys have been giving me a lot of support lately. And what better way to give back to you guys than to make a video? And a video which is a tutorial, and more specifically, a PMX Editor tutorial, because lately I've been having a lot of people ask me, how do you use PMX Editor, and what are some tools that are in PMX Editor that you can use, and how do you use them? But for the first section of this tutorial, I'm going to be talking about PMX models. How do you get them? Now keep in mind, I'm not going to be going in depth about these different methods, but I will be talking about those type of methods and what people, how kind of like give a gist on how people use them. So let's get started with the first method though. And the first method is one of the most common ones. The common method, and it's called the pre-existing parts assemble. This is basically where you take a model that already exists and you modify it. It's basically just simple editing. Here's the thing about this method. The thing about this is, well, first of all, let me introduce you to Tida Miku, Hatsune Miku, or TDA. Some people say TDA, some people say Tida. I'm gonna say Tida. But for Tida Miku here, this is our lovely little flower. She is actually one of the most popular MMD models out there. A lot of people use her, especially VR chat users. Now, here's the problem I do want to mention about using pre-existing parts and assembling it into one model, or your own model, or quote-unquote your own model, since the copyright is still not yours. Which, that's the thing, copyright is a big issue. Now, a lot of these models are copyrighted. They have their own set of rules that the author plays in order to basically protect, their own art style and protect their own model. But here's the thing, this is actually one of the biggest models with the most rule breakers. Of course, there are other models with their own rule breakers, but this is actually one of the biggest ones. Now, I'm not going to be going over about the rules for this model, as well as other rules for different model types. You will have to look that up on your own. Or if you want me to send you a link about it, I could, but I'm not gonna do that. But basically, I just want you guys to be aware that there are rules for you guys to consider when downloading parts, whether it's just a simple hat model or a shirt or even just a normal base model, that there's always copyright, and if you break those rules, which that's morally wrong, you can actually either get backlash from the community or you get backlash from the actual author themselves. So please do not risk it. And even if you have gotten away with rule breaking, please don't do it. Please don't continue it. Please stop, because then one day you are going to be caught in this. But enough of that. Just saying that, be careful. You can still use this method since it is quite common in the MMD community, and there's more tutorials about this, which is pretty useful. So you can use it, but please use it at your own risk if you're considering donations and commercial use. Okay? And same thing with R18 and violence. That's another thing I'll mention. But let's go on with the next method, and this is one method that some VTubers actually asked me about, and it's where they take their VRM model and put it in MMD. Now, I will say this also, live 2D models do not work in MMD. They do not work. They are 2D models, not 3D. They have to be a 3D model to work in MMD. I will say that. I want to say that there is actually a program that can easily convert your VRM models to PMX Editor with only 2 clicks. And it is called the VRM to PMX Converter, which is a really nice program which allows to convert your VRM models super quickly to PMX. I will say that yes, this is a very good method, but keep in mind that you need to still use PMX Editor to add the required MMD bones, which semi-bones plugins actually help does that easily too. That way when you put a motion on your model, it will not look super stiff. Because some people told me about stiff movement. The semi-bone plugin for PMX Editor, which is already included in the one I'm going to be linking you guys in a little bit, or showing you guys that one, the English one, which is actually right here. I'll show you right now. This one already has the Semi-Bones plugin inside of it already when you download it. So use that in order to make your models not super stiff. But some people had issues with this part here. The password is actually 2U with 2 U's. You type this here and you click on download, and here's some proof that it actually works. See? There you go. So this is a very great way. Now, some people actually had problems with this too. And I usually see this a lot with low-spec computers. I'm not sure why, but it happens with them. It might happen to high-spec, I'm not quite sure. But there is another method to doing this. And this is with Unity. Now, there is a Unity package right here, which I'll be linking you guys all in everything I'm showing you guys will be linked in the description, okay? So hopefully that'll help you. So this is the Unity package. So in case that program does not work for you, please download this package right here. So you're gonna get Unity, you're going to download this little package right here, and you're also going to put your VRML into Unity, and you're going to basically add component to your model, and then there's this tiny little gear that should be on the top right in that little component, and you should click on it, click export, choose your location, and that's pretty much it. I'm not going to go in details on it, but if you guys are having issues with it, please let me know, comment. You can even private DM me on Discord or Twitter. I actually would recommend Discord because sometimes if you're having very serious issues that's really hard to explain, I usually would just screen share what I do and you follow along, and hopefully that helps. And that actually helps a lot of people. So if you need that, if you need a personal tutor, I'm here for you. So there's that. Really epic. Now, what if you don't have a model at all, but you still want to have some sort of model to play with? Now, most people actually just download models just normally. So there are websites like Booth, right here, Booth Pixiv. When you Google Booth, please add Pixiv to it, otherwise this is not going to show up. Because if you type in Booth, it's not going to show up. You have to type in Pixiv, because that's, those are the people who run the website. There's also DeviantArt, which you can download MMD models. You could just type in MMD models here. And it should pop up with some. You can even look up some, you know, Miku model, your favorite anime like Naruto. You can basically almost any anime character you can think of. You can type their name, you can find it, and if you don't, if apparently you don't find a specific model you're looking for, as I said, there's the method of pre-existing parts assembly that can work. A lot of people use that, but be careful with the rules. And you can also Google it. There's other websites that you can go to in order to get like models or model parts. So that's really useful, and it's really nice that these websites exist. There's even Bullroll, of course. Bullroll has a lot of good parts too, which is really useful. I actually find most of my effects on Bullroll, and even some cool particle effects, so that's really nice. Now, I also want to say, some people might also want to make their models from scratch. So what if that is the case? Well, there's actually a program called Blender. Blender is a free 3D program that is open source, which allows you to make models. Now, if you do own Maya or 3ds Max, you can use those. For this program, you do have to download the MMD Blender tools, which I will put in the description for that. You have to use that in order to, you know, import and export PMX files. So make sure you get that. But this is very useful. I personally use it, and I love Blender. So yeah. There's also this program here, which not a lot of people talk about too much, but many PMX users love using this program, and it's called Sequoia, and they use version 4, but any version you can use. They use this program. It's actually much more easier to kind of like put into PMX Editor in comparison with Blender, but even then, both programs still work regardless. It's very useful, so choose a program you like. There should be some tutorials for, like, you know, Maya to PMX. And if not, there should be some forums. If there's no videos, there should be forums about it. I'm not, like I said, I'm not really going to go in depth on it because I myself do not use Macleod. I do not convert my models from Maya to PMX, or I don't use 3ds Max. I only use Blender. So you can ask me Blender questions, but if you have a question about Maya or 3ds Max, I cannot really answer that. I apologize. But I could try to help you find resources for it, so hopefully that helps. Oh yeah, I also, I forgot to say one thing. There's actually an add-on called MMD Bridge. Now, I actually tried it before to convert my PMX files into Blender ones. I'm not sure how that plugin is doing. I'm not sure if it exports PMX from, another program and then back to PMX. But I'm just going to let you guys know that that is a plugin that exists. But anyways, hopefully that covers pretty much everything about PMX files. If I miss anything, you can add it to the comments and I'll pin it. But also, if by any chance this doesn't help you, please let me know if you're looking for something more specific, and I will gladly answer your question or give you a feedback on it, okay? But let's move on to downloading PMX Editor. So right here, this is the English version of PMX Editor, which I will be using in this tutorial. I personally use the Japanese version of PMX Editor, since I've actually, when I was starting off PMX Editor, I just grown to getting used to reading in Japanese. But also, it's actually in a much more newer version than this one. There's not really much of a difference between the Japanese newest version and the English newest version, other than bug fixes on the Japanese version. So you're okay with using this version. It's alright. Now, basically, some people are lost on this part. Some were wondering which is the correct link for PMX Editor and why is there multiple links for PMX Editor. Well, these are mirrors, and the reason why they're here is because a lot of people, especially in different countries, some people might have server issues. So most people actually go for Mega, but in case Mega doesn't work, you can always use Box or Mediafire. Any of these will work. You should be able to have PMX Editor as a 7Z file. There's also translate plugins here. Now, I will be going over 7Z zips on how to extract them, but before we get into that, this is something very important, and a lot of people would forget this. There is something that you have to do before you extract, and that's the unblocking. Now, the reason why you unblock the zip file is so that way, Windows Defender doesn't detect PMX Editor as a virus. And also, if you don't unblock it, you will actually, when you open up PMX Editor, you're going to run into so many errors, because once you click on it, you're going to have a spam of errors pop up in your face, and you're going to have to click OK, spam, click OK, all of them, just so you can use it. And I don't think I want to spam OK every time I use PMX Editor. I did that before until I found out about unblocking, so I'm saving you guys. I need to save you guys. But anyways, please make sure to unblock, but I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm just going to show you with a random zip file. So let's see here. Let's use one of the VSeeFace zip files. I downloaded the VSeeFace so much. But what you're going to do is you're going to right click on the PMX Editor 7Z file. So pretend it's this file here. You're going to go into Properties, click on it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to click on Unblock, click on Apply, click on OK, and boom! There you go, it's unblocked. And now you can extract it, and there you go. But then some people also ask, how do you extract a 7Z file? I personally use BandyZip, which you can just click on the 7Z because this program supports it. And all you have to do is click on the extract button right here, and you get PMX Editor on your desktop or wherever you placed it. And also, if by any chance your computer doesn't, if by any chance you have like the Japanese version of PMX Editor and your computer does not really support Japanese, you could actually click on Code Page and select Japanese, or the language it's in, but Japanese for this case. And it should kind of like help with those weird symbols, the weird Unicode issue. But because, you know, we're dealing with English PMX Editor, we don't really have to do that. Now, there are other programs other than BandyZip that people use. I'm not sure about those programs, but if you do know a program that does extract 7Z files, you can leave them in the comment section and say, hey, you would recommend this program. But even then, as long as it extracts 7Z and you're able to get the file, you should be fine. It doesn't matter what program, just as long as you get it, it should work. Now, sometimes some people would get something called the 3D issue. Now, I can't say the other word. I'm not the best at English for some reason. But the thing is well, the reason why some people would have that 3D error issue that sometimes pop up in PMX Editor is because you are missing some components. Now, I can't really pinpoint what part actually fixes it, but what I could recommend you is right here. So what you would have to do is first download this right here. Now, if you have a Windows 10 computer, you should have this already. The Net framework, you should probably have a newer version. But in case you don't, or you have an old computer, you might want to get that. You also want to get this version of DirectX. If you have the DirectX 12, which most people have, you should be fine. But sometimes some people would actually still have that issue. So some people would just download this, put it somewhere in their computer. It doesn't matter where, as long as it's somewhere in your computer. And it should also help. Sometimes it doesn't. But you can also download the Microsoft Visual C++ 2010. You can download that. Check your control panel or your settings on your computer to see if you're 32-bit or 64-bit. And hopefully that also fixed the issue. Now, if by any chance it gives you like an error message saying it won't download, it's most likely because you already have it installed and you have a newer version. And that's okay. If you have a newer version, that's perfectly fine. But if this still does not help you at all, there should be a README file in PMX Editor. So I'm gonna try and show you guys. So right here, this is the README text I always tell most of my people. Oops, hold up, pause. I don't know why this is open. So right here, this is the English PMX Editor folder, and as I said, there is a README file right here. So what you have to do is you click on it, and right here should talk. It should be in English already. And it should have all kind of like, you know, about PMX Editor, and kind of tells you about, you know, the requirements for it. And they should also have links. So if by any chance you still have that 3D issue, check out these links. Maybe you're still missing something. So maybe you can try checking the links, maybe download and see if you're able to download something. Maybe it might help you with your issue. If for some reason you still get that 3D error, I'm not sure I'm not sure what else I can do. The least I would do is try messing around with downloading stuff. Maybe check the comments, look it up. I did have to take a couple hours looking up the 3D initializing problem. So it did took a long time for me to fix it. So yeah, do keep in mind about that. That's pretty much how I would fix the problem. That's how I was able to fix it. But for others, it might be different. But I can't really help too much on that. But I still wanted to try my best to probably give you guys some tips on that. But other than that, if you don't have that error anymore, and I do hope that my explanation helps, because this is actually one of the biggest issues with PMX Editor, that 3D issue. But hopefully by then it should be gone already, and if it's not, comment down, let me know if you still have the error, and I'll try my best to help you further. It'll still be quite complicated, but I'll try my best to help. But why don't we start off? Well, since we already have PMX Editor in our hands, and you should have already extracted it after unblocking, you're ready to use PMX Editor. And also you have your model of choice, since I already explained about the how to get your model, a PMX model, and all that stuff. So yeah. And also one last thing as well, about the model thing. Right here, in case, because when it comes to PMX Editor or MMD, especially since they originated from Japan, a lot of times some certain tutorials that you might be helpful might come out in Japanese, or a certain model that you want might be in Japanese. So if by any chance you're having issues reading Japanese, you can actually copy and paste and put them right here, Japanese, and then you put it to English, or if you're Spanish, you can put Spanish. It's not going to be perfect, but at least it'll give you something that you might understand. And also, you can actually right-click, and you should be able to Google Translate. It should pop up on other websites. This is also important for readmes, in case, you know, model rules and you don't understand it, and you want to make sure you prevent yourself from breaking rules. And yes, there's also rules on MMD motions as well, so make sure you read those too. There's rules on basically everything, even the pose data, so please stay safe, everyone. But let's get started with the actual main part of the tutorial, and that's getting to know PMX Editor. So now let's get to the main part of the tutorial, and that's how to use PMX Editor. So right here, as you can see, I am going to be using the lovely Tita Miku, because honestly this model is really good for demonstration purposes, so hopefully that helps you guys, especially those who uses a Tita model style themselves. This should be even more useful. Now here's the thing, this is a little PMX Editor little tool window here, but this is the PMX View, so make sure you know the differences between the two. So right here, let's start off with the first section. We're going to go over these tabs first, and then I'll go over some of the tabs up here. So let's start with this. Now right here, this is our info. This is talking about what the model name is, and any comments, whether it's, you know, rules, copyright information, that, you know, the copyright, since Hatsune Miku is owned by Krypton and the modeler is Tita. And giving some additional facts, the fact that it has all luminous support for the effect on MMD. So really cool, and it's a version 1.10, so gives us some nice information. Sometimes some modelers, especially edited models, might have it blank. Sometimes their information, but it's really nice to add some info here. But this is the Japanese translation. There is also an English box you can click on right here in order to translate to English, but you do have to actually provide the English translation. You have to. If it's left blank, people are going to have a hard time reading it. Especially with duplicates, which I'll be getting to with the material, you definitely would have to translate as well. Especially also the English, if you're using English MMD, this part of MMD will be showing, not this one. This one will be shown in the English translation of MMD, not this one. This one's for Japanese, okay? Now right here, this is just, not a lot of people really touch this. This is basically just telling you your vertice count on the model, and just giving you some like coordinates of each vertice basically. You don't really have to mess with this. It's just going to give you some additional facts. If you want to mess with some of the things, I personally don't mess with this too much, because I mainly just put my models in here and edit it. But you can play around if you want with this, but honestly I wouldn't mess with it. I wouldn't risk it. But it's nice to know that you can check your vertice count. Same with the faces tab. It tells you what your faces are, your triangles. So this model has 33,411 tries, which this is actually pretty useful, especially if you're converting a model to VR chat. This is definitely going to tell you if you're, you know, reaching the required polygon count. And especially if you're converting your model for VRM, if you want to try keeping your model optimized, this is pretty useful, so very nice. Now let's move on to the materials tab. Now, as I said, with the English, make sure that is translated right. Now, right here, let's pretend, now like here, sometimes it'll be left blank. So we can pretend it's blank. Actually, just erase it. But sometimes it'll be left blank like this. And this actually, now these materials will show up when it comes to you assigning effects on MMD. So it is advised that you translate it. So I could put in face 00 or just put face, just so that way when I assign effects using English MMD, that the correct name will show up. Because if you're because then you're just gonna see EN and you're gonna have a very hard time with assigning effects. So hopefully that will help you. Remember, the Japanese will not be shown unless you're using Japanese MMD. And by Japanese MMD, I mean when you open up the MMD program and you tell MMD to either give you English or Japanese translation, it'll just show it as this. Now, right here, the diffuse is basically the color of the model. So I can make it into red, and it'll just make the character red. I would advise keeping it to white if you're using textures. Especially like, usually like when it comes to like light manipulation, you want to make sure that the lighting's a bit more accurate in MMD. Especially with other programs, but you can still use diffuse if you want to get a more exact color, but I would leave it as white as best you can. There's also specular. Specular is basically a type of shine that shows up on your model. As you can see right here, that is a specular. That's literally the shine right here, and it's very nice if you want like kind of like a shiny look or a metallic look. Pretty nice. So, I would leave it off, but if you want to like make something a little more shinier, you can use it. Go ahead. There's also ambient. Ambient actually messes with your lighting. So, let's see. We can actually make it orange, and it also affects the line right there. Now, usually, like I said, this one, diffuse kind of affects the color of the model, but ambient affects the lighting of the model. So I would advise, especially this is mainly like raycast, I would advise to keep it somewhere like gray. Because if you leave it white, it might be much more harder to use light manipulation with colors. So I would advise keeping around like the gray level, like 0.5. That way you can use light manipulation with the colors. Because if you leave it white, you're going to have a hard time with it. So over here you have opaque. Opaque is basically a fancy word for is it visible or is it not. So I can put 0 and the model is gone. I could put 0.5 and it looks like a ghost. So put 1. If you want to kind of have a more transparent effect with like tears, you could put 0.5 on that. Reflection doesn't really do too much, but this is mainly used on autoluminous. This is kind of like giving that shine effect basically. So if you are dealing with autoluminous, I would recommend you put the brightness as 50, or if you want to go super bright, it's 110. But if you want to go semi-bright, you can put 50 for autoluminous. I usually just leave it at 5. If you're not going to use autoluminous too much, but you want some shine, just put 5 right there. Right here, sync, diffuse, and ambient. This is basically just, it's not really useful, honestly. I wouldn't really use it. It just kind of like makes diffuse and ambient work together, but I honestly like to have more editing, more kind of like, you know, setups with diffuse and ambient. So I wouldn't click on this, but if you want to, go ahead. Now, rendering. So you can put 2 sides. So if by any chance you're having a weird issue where one side isn't showing but the other side is, you can enable 2 side. But if you disable it, sometimes you might see the issue, sometimes you won't. Usually I advise you disable it if you want to save rendering power, or if there's a certain mesh that has the geometry faces too close to each other to where they look very ugly and clipping. So I would advise to leave it disabled. It's okay if it's disabled. It's not mandatory. It's up to the model and basically your choice. So G shadow is basically basically it's like your ground shadow. Now the light setup I have for PMX Editor doesn't really show, so let me just quickly kind of change that a little bit. There you go. Just for now, I'll definitely talk about that little window and later on. But as you can see right here, there's a little ground shadow. Just click on it and it disables your ground shadow. So right here, now there is something called S-map and S-shadow. So what's the difference between them? Well, this one right here, this is for self-shadow. This is kind of like, as you can see with the little hair, it's kind of giving its own, like, it casts its own shadow on the mesh. But on S-shadow right here, it just casts shadow to other meshes. It's kind of hard to explain, but that's what it does. It kind of adds more shadow to it. So if you want to add more shadow, you can enable both. If you're having a shadow issue, like you see some shadows happening with your eyes, you might want to disable the S-shadow right here, or the S-map if you don't want it to have its own like little shadow on the eyes. So there's that. There's also V color, which honestly it's useless. There's no point. It just gets rid of the colors. So there's that. There's also this little section that some people miss out on. This is actually pretty useful if you want to kind of get like a wireframe look. So watch this. So right here, this one's on try. So this is basically showing your polygons. But if you click on point, oh, look at that. You got little points, and that's just showing your vertices. Looks spooky, but some people would actually love this. I'm not sure who, but, you know, all power to you. There is also line, which gives that wireframe look. So you don't have to go to MMD and enable wireframe mode. You can literally just have it in PMX Editor. And you can export and it does that. I'm not sure if this might cause issues when putting it into other programs. Maybe. I advise keep on try, but if you want that in MMD, then all power to you. Now, there's also the edge outline. This is to give like a toon effect. Now, you're probably not able to see the outlines. You're like, where are the outlines on Miku? Where's her outlines? I mean, Cadet has outlines, but Miku doesn't. What happened? Well, that's because they're not enabled. So what you have to do is you're gonna follow my mouse. You're gonna go down here and click on edge, and now you can see the outline. This is mostly used to give that like anime look, which a lot of people use, that toon look that a lot of people like. So very useful, very useful. So you can enable it. You can change the color to whatever you like. You can have these basic colors. You know, just choose. You can even save custom colors too. Just click on blue and then add custom colors here. You can do that. You can change the size too. So if you don't want 0.6, you can have 1 for thicker outlines. You can also right here, this is just kind of like the values for the color of the outline. So that's pretty much it for the outline right here. So let's move on to texture memo. So right here, let's select the face right here, this little face material slot. So right here, this is the texture. It's a TGA file, but you can use PNG or JPEG, any image file. And right here, this shows the character's face texture. Which actually, if you want to replace the face texture, all you have to do is click on File, open texture, select the texture that you want, and then click on update, and it should update it. For some reason, change texture doesn't work. I tried it before. For some reason, it's not working for me. So I don't use that. Right here, these are the little size. I don't really mess with these either. I just leave it to the size of the image. If you want a bigger view of it to see if there's any issues, you can do that. You can edit the texture, which should probably open up Microsoft Paint, which you could do editing, but I would advise, I mean, you can use Microsoft Paint, but if you have Photoshop or GIMP or Clip Studio or Paint.net or any photo editing program, you can just modify the texture as shown here. View, you can change the view if you want. That also works too, so very nice. And then your image size should be right here if you want a specific file size or image size right here. Now, right here, this is called a sphere map, but also it's actually called a matcap. Usually for VRM models, they call it matcap, as well as other 3D programs. PMX Editor calls it sphere maps because it acts like a sphere. Basically what this is kind of like a fake reflection on the model. So instead of using specular, you kind of have a little bit more control on the reflectiveness of the model. Now keep in mind it's fake, so it's not going to be like reflecting real time. Like basically, if I were to make a shiny sphere map on Miku, and if, let's say, there's another model, like, hovering over her, let's say a beach ball or something, that matcap is not going to capture the beach ball or something. You'll have to do some pretty advanced effects setting up for something like that. But this is just for, like, a little fake reflection, which, right here, this is how their sphere map looks like. It looks weird, but this is basically just showing a very light rim type of lighting going on in the model. You can also kind of see a little bit of it on the hair, a little bit. You can also see it on the little metallic part right here. That's basically the matcap in action. It kind of gives that nice fake reflection. It's really nice if you want that metallic look, or you want a specific hair shine, like an anime character. You know, a lot of stuff you can do with matcaps. Pretty cool. Same thing as textures. You can open texture, select your file, and then click on update to change it. You can go ahead with that. Now right here, this is your sphere map type. Right here, this actually, if you get rid of this and you leave add texture, there might be some errors detected with PMX Editor, which I'll eventually get to. And I also will put right here, yes, this is going to be a very long video, but I am providing you guys every single information about these programs, so I'm sorry if this is too much information for you guys. I will put that right in the middle of this video. Just gonna say that. But anyways, basically, multiply sphere usually just kind of makes the, just makes it black basically, or basically reverse basically. It's just reversing the sphere map. I don't really use this as much, but some people might find it useful if you want to inverse the sphere map. But most people just use the add type, which is pretty nice. Subtexture, this is mainly used if you want to try getting normal maps. Now, no, I will say this, no, MMD itself does not support normal maps or bump maps or any maps like that. You would need an effect like raycast or IK polish. There's another there's other shaders available that are very advanced that do accept normal maps. And even also even the simplest effects can actually support normal maps too. Like they don't do it with the like raycast. You can actually, instead of using this right here, you can actually just like kind of open the effects files and just type in the normal map file, and it'll just load the effect with the normal map. There's even Learn MMD guides about it for more information on subtexture. Now, toon maps, they're mainly used if you want to have more control on kind of like your shadows in MMD. So let's zoom in on Miku. So let's see. Now there are some preset toon maps right here. So this is very nice. It kind of adds shadows. See? So it's very nice. If you don't want shadows, you can get rid of it. But if you want shadows, you can add. You can choose what you want. Very nice. You can even create your own. Basically, all you literally have to do in order to make a toon map is just take a very small image file, whether it's 32 by 32 or slightly bigger, and just make like a gradient, just to make a gradient thing. Just basically use the gradient tool. It could be soft, it could be a hard line, hard shells, whichever suits you. So that's very useful, very useful. Now memo, not a lot of people really use this, but this is actually pretty good if you want to make notes about the material, if you're giving them all out. So you can type in something like, for example, let's see, for example, material has normals issues, which is basically referring to the faces kind of having some issues with the geometry normals when it comes to like creating those shadows. Let's say that, for example, even though this model's actually pretty well made, this is something you could put. You can even put that maybe it's opaque or transparent. You could put any information like that. Most people don't even worry about it, but it's pretty good to have some notes. There's also these little buttons right here. So there's a top, which basically can take a little material and just take it to the top. The B button right here puts the material to the bottom. And then you can use these to move it around, because you can't really click and drag. So if you want to rearrange, just use these arrows. And if you want to delete something, you can delete. You can also do some more by right-clicking, and you can either delete, move up, you can select all of them. You can copy index, you know, copying kind of like the components of the material. Material selection view, batch name editor, which kind of just shows you the Japanese and the English translations, which actually this is pretty useful. So if you are having if by any chance you have Japanese names, but there are some, you know, blanks, or it looks something like this, you can simply just click right here. You can copy, paste it, and click on go, or you can click it, take it to Google Translate, you know, translate there. And fun fact, actually, right here, I would advise clicking on this one, because if you have like a lot of names, there's a limit on this. This one kind of has a bit more, like it kind of extends the limit a lot more. You can just copy and paste it, and it will translate for you. So yeah, and that's pretty much it. You can go over your material, bone, morph, display, and so on. There's also other settings like duplicate parts, which if you want to make a duplication of a certain material, you can select faces, vertex. Most people use the duplicate all, which is pretty nice. I use that myself as well. You can copy without name, copy paste, copy node. I mainly just use copy and paste. The others I don't really use as much. Save as CSV. This is mainly like if you want to, well, mainly I use this on like shape keys. But basically this is kind of like taking basically most of the data from that material and just saving it into like a separate file, which you can redistribute if you like, but sometimes you might have issues using these. But you can save and load, which is really nice. And then copy, paste clipboard, and then you can save once again as a CSV. So that, hopefully that covers the material part. And also, yes, you can see your face count right here with the tries per material. Really nice. But let's move on to the bone tab. Now, with most MMD models, it's going to have everything in Japanese. Why is that? As stated, PMX Editor and MMD were originally made with the Japanese language. So the skeleton was made using the structure, using the Japanese name structure. So, and also, the thing is also, is that when it comes to like mirroring parts, like mirroring bones, mirroring physics, and meshes, well, mainly mirroring bones and physics, they have the symbol for right and the symbol for left. This is very useful when trying to mirror parts, so that way it's much more easier. And also, when you are using MMD and you want to kind of mirror the animation, so let's say you animate one side of your hand and you want to mirror it to the other side of your hand, keeping it with this setup will definitely help you with mirroring. Very useful, yes. I would advise try to keep the names Japanese on the Japanese side, and then with the English button, you name it. You could say waist, but this one is head, so I can type in head. You can type it there, that way you can understand what it is. This is also very useful if you translate it, because if you don't translate it, it's going to come out as that's a common bone name, null. So please make sure you go to English and click and just type. You could go to the batch editor and also fix it by the copy paste method. So go ahead and do that. There's also position, which tells you, the coordinates of where the bone is placed. This tells you what the parent bone is. So the head is parented to the neck. So whenever the neck moves, the head bone will move. So cool stuff. The linking is basically, so if I go here and enable the bone structure, the linking is basically, so this is mainly used when you're trying to connect the lower body to the upper body. If you want to have that nice organized chain, so it has that connected look to keep things clean, it's right here. Now, there is also the offset, so if you do not want to connect it to another bone, or maybe you don't have an end bone, and so an end bone is basically an end bone is basically these like small little these white little bones. I don't see it on this one. Oh, right here. There it is. It looks like this. That's an end bone, which are mostly referred to. But they're actually invisible bones, basically. End bones, invisible bones, you can call them either. But if you want to use offset to kind of like keep it clean, because the less invisible bones you have, the more clean the model is. But even then, it's still useful to have those. Just to have more control with where the placement of the bone, the bone direction is, the bone line. That's really useful. So you can kind of have your own like little coordinates. You can put 1.5 and all that, and it follows the X, Y, and Z axes, so you can mess around with that. Right here, not a lot of people really mess with this, but this is kind of like your little advanced settings. This is kind of like your constraints, basically. So like a twist bone, this is a twist bone right here. This right here is giving the, these are the constraints right here. Some people also use this to, if you want like automatic spinning on like certain parts of the model. Like I've seen some models that have automatic spinning. This right here kind of does that for the bones, which is really nice. So you have your constraints, you can set it up so it automatically does that. And this is also good if you want to have like a certain parent. So kind of like a sub-parent, basically. This is very useful for. Really nice, really nice. Now, there's a deform right here. It kind of just messes around with how the bones move, which, when it comes to IKs, you must have the deform at 1, or you're going to have issues. Because if it's at 0, it's going to bug out a lot. So make sure the deform is at 1, and then normal bones like your arms, your legs, your normal legs, not the IK ones, even though those are just control bones, but, other bones other than IK should be left at deform 0. Or if you're using something like an auto breathing plugin, you would probably have to do a lot of adjustments with that. So right here in the set, this is just telling you kind of like what can the bone do, kind of like the limits. So right here, if you see this little circle right here, this means that it's a rotate only bone, so it only just rotates. But if you see something like a square, or a little square looking thing right here on the tongue, the little tongue area, that is movement, but it's also rotating too. Sometimes it could just be limited to movement only, but it can also rotate as well. So right here, movement, rotate. Anything that's indicated as orange, which is down here, it's also on the tail and the hair, but it's also on her feet. That is the IK bone. that moves. It has its own like little chain of bones that it controls. It's right here. You can enable it there. Viz is just adjusting the visibility, and basically enable allows you to select it. Select and basically mess around with that bone. Now for IKs, this is your target bone, kind of like the bone you want to target. Your looping kind of messes around with like, pretty much like, if I were to put in simple words, I might be wrong on it. I'm gonna try to explain it though. But looping kind of messes with kind of like the movement a little bit, kinda. I don't know how to explain it in simple terms. But if you mess around with it, it does kind of affect with how, like whenever you move around, it just affects it. But I know for a fact, in simple terms with angle, right here, this kind of adjusts the angle of it. So if you have issues, you can, if you have issues with the angle, you would have to adjust it here. You can also click the little bone links here, which the links are right here. Little bone 1, upper thigh bone, and lower thigh bone. Right here, you can set some limits, which usually if you're having some derpy leg movement, this is really useful. The common negative 180 and the negative 0.5 usually helps with fixing models with derpy legs, so that's useful. But other than that, you know, you have the same setup with the copy paste, adding, even the adding bone. Yes, this is, you can right click and you can add to end, to here. So I can add to here and add the bone right there. X, you can even click the plus button right here and add a bone to the end. You can even delete if you want. You can add a link. You can even duplicate it, even with the shortcuts here, Control D, Control I to add. Pretty cool stuff right here. Yes, yes. So very nice. But other than that, I think we're pretty much good. Just to get the entire thing about this. If I mess up on anything, please let me know. Or if I forgot something, do let me know in the comments. Now we're gonna go to morph. So right here, morph just messes with the character's expression. So I'm gonna go to transform view really quickly. I'm gonna go to Miku, and then you just click on these sliders right here, and it just makes her blink. It makes her have some expressions, look at her excited. And also just other stuff right here. Very nice, very nice. So, that's what blend shapes, morphs, there's multiple names for these. That's what they basically do. So, you can basically, if you want to edit them, so if you're doing like a face edit, you can select the morph, right click it, click on vertex UV morph edit, and you can be able to edit here. This right here, this is just showing your view on how the morph will look like once you use the slider. Threshold, kind of just it just kind of like affects, kind of like the impact of the expression. I would usually just leave it at 0, but you could leave it at default. A pretty low number is pretty good. The panel is just, when it comes to loading the model in MMD, it just tells you what panel you want in, the name, then the vertex type or UV type, whichever it is. Because there are UV shape keys, bone shape keys, as well as the vertex, which most people use. The vertex count that the amount of vertices that are used on that shape key. And you can, if by any chance you lost your subview, you can click on display on subview, and hopefully it has your Miku there. You can update or append. Append is basically just creating a new expression. Update is just to update the pre-existing one. You can also click to new morph if you want. So if you want to adjust something, you can. You could change it from vertex to UV. You can't really edit bone type of like anything with the bone type, group type, or flip type shape keys, you can't really use this to fix it. You would have to use the parameters that are displayed right here. But it's still pretty nice to have the UV shape keys. Very awesome. You can even edit. There's some settings here. You can mirror your shape key. So if you have one mouth open here, but you want to mirror the other side to make it open, you can mirror edit. It's not really perfect. Sometimes there's actually issues with this, but it mostly works sometimes. You can basically reset the shape key, reset selection, set to origin position. This one actually does reset. You can create material morph, all these cool settings here, send snapshot. I mainly just use the set original position just to reset it. I don't really use anything else here, but you know, you can mess around with it if it does come to use. So the sub view right here, basically this is just a second version of the PMX view. It's not really like very different. It's just there to help you with editing. You can even also adjust your panel right here. Right here you can change the UV type if it's a UV shape key. You can even see the vertices right here. You don't really have to mess with this. This is just kind of giving the coordinates of each vertex that is affected within that shape key. And that pretty much covers this. I'm not going to go too in depth with the bone ones. There's even, as I said, material blend shapes are here if you want to make something fade out, fade in. Very nice. But also, yes, that's the other thing I need to talk about. So for material morph, you have your multiply and add. For the colors, you can do all 0, all 1 if you want it to appear or disappear. Adjust your outline, adjust your texture colors, you know, what's the visibility of the model, reflect, and all that other stuff. Very nice, very nice. You can mess around with this if you like. You can even reset if you want. All that. But you can even do the same thing right here with the materials. So if there's like multiple materials like this, you can move them up and down here. So that's very nice. Offset, this is pretty much just saying what the number of it is. I don't really mess with this. I just use the up and down here. But that should pretty much cover that. I'm not gonna go too in depth on the others because these are impulse, flip, and group are hardly used. But group is basically just taking pre-existing shape keys and just combining them together. And everything else is pretty much the same. It's pretty much the same thing as the other tabs right here. Now display, this is actually one of the most forgotten tabs, but also the most important tab. This is basically kind of like this is where when you go to MMD, this shows you like your bone groups basically. This is your bone groups. So when you click here, this shows, you know, your bones, each section. This one's for control bones, IK bones, upper body, and so on. So basically, I would keep them organized. Now, whenever it comes to edited models, they would have like 200 displays. If you want to get rid of those extras, because that'll actually lag your computer if you keep them, you can simply just shift select, and then you can hit the X key and then delete any of those extras, or else you're gonna lag. So no lag. Make sure to also delete duplicates as well, because if there are duplicates, it can actually mess up how your model acts during the animation process. So make sure to be cautious about that. So hopefully that helps. There's even the same up and down here. If you want to register a missing bone, you can go to the bone here, click on the bone, and then add. You can even click on morph and add a morph there. Right here is where you actually add your morphs, and there you go. Just keep it organized. But over here, you would add your bones. Just to, you know, keep stuff organized. And then root is basically like your controller bone, the main controller. And the main controller is right here. So there you go. There's also morph type, panel type, and all that. I don't really mess with these either, but if you wanna, you know, mask them, go ahead. But mainly, if you do want to register hidden bones for some reason, or disabled bones, you can have it there. I wouldn't advise messing, I wouldn't advise like registering hidden bones, but if you want, go ahead. It's not really necessary. It might actually be more of a hassle for you. So that's pretty much it. But that covers the display panel. Rigid body is basically where your physics are. Now, rigid body and joint must work together. The rigid bodies have the physics, but the joints are what, you know, keeps the rigid bodies from falling apart. They keep them together. So for rigid body, there are the rigid body types: bone track, which is basically like your body colliders; physics, which is like kind of like your normal physics that moves a lot; and then physics plus bone alignment is basically kind of giving a more sturdy, kind of like a more stable physics. But sometimes you might want to have more movement, so this is very useful. Kind of like skirts, this is pretty useful for, and then physics plus bone alignment might be good for hair. But it depends on what you're looking for. There's shape form, if you want, actually I'm going to show you how these rigid bodies look like. So if you go down here, you can click on show rigid body, show rigid body. There's this one, and then there's also this one right here. We're going to use this one. So right here you can see there's different types of shapes. So that's very nice. Now let me just pull it up. So right here, just kind of like adjust the shape right here. So you want cube, or you want sphere, or kind of like a, I can't really describe the shape, kind of like a cylinder, like a rounded cylinder basically. So you can mess with that. It also, the shape also does mess with your physics, so do keep in mind, especially if you're trying to get like smooth physics or a certain physics type, or even a certain movement when it comes to the hair colliding with your body, you would have to focus on this. There's also radius, also affects your physics type, as well as height. But it depends. If you have the sphere, you have only radius. If you have the box, you have width, height, and depth. And then if you have this, you just have those two. You have position and rotation, just for the coordinates, but you can also move it in the PMX view. There's also physics settings, the mass, how heavy, movement, how much it moves, rotation, how much it rotates. So for repel and friction, they mainly just mess around with like, kind of like how the collision, how like when your hair and your arm, when they touch each other, it kind of just affects like how the movement is. So like sometimes if you increase the friction on the hair moving past the arm, it kind of like slows the hair down. But if you put it at 0, it'll just make the hair move faster from the arm. If that makes sense to you guys, I wouldn't really mess with this. This kind of like, it might actually have some weird results, but there are certain situations you might want to have more control of the physics. So by all means, you can go ahead, but try not to have it too high or it's gonna look really weird. Now, what you have over here, these are your groups, and these are very important because a lot of people have issues with clipping. Your hair clips through your body, your skirt clips through your legs, crazy stuff like that. This is basically where you actually fix that. So these groups, so let me try explaining this in a good way. So you have here your body groups, but you have the hair as green. So what you're going to do is you're going to select, your body colliders, and what you're going to do is you're just going to tell PMX Editor which group of physics do you want the hair, or do you want the body to touch or not touch. So for this case, the bodies can't really touch each other. Even then, bone type, they don't really interact with each other. They only interact with physics. But basically, I can set this to ignore group 2, and I'll show you. If I were to move her arm back by selecting her arm and doing this, there you go, you can see that it's not colliding at all. But if you were to enable it, or disable it basically, if you disable the group, you can see that it now collides. So that's pretty much what it does. It kind of controls the collision of the hair. See? There you go. And you can see that friction happening. That hair isn't falling off very easily. The hair is very controlled. Yes. And other than that, you know, you can mess with the, you know, movement. Right here, you can move around the slots here if you want them in a specific order. But other than that, oh yeah, one more thing. So let's say you have an issue where there's a rigid body floating. Like, let's say your character's dancing and your hair randomly flings all over the place. And you look at your rigid body and you see like a floating rigid body. Or everything looks fine, but when you have MMD and you see your rigid bodies, you see that the hair, this hair rigid body is just floating. Well, the reason why for that is because of link bone. This is telling the rigid body what bone is it linking to. If it's set to blank, all it's going to do is just it's just going to sit there basically. It's not going to do anything. But if you were to have a bone, it will follow that. Whichever bone is connected to, that rigid body will move that bone. So now that we cover pretty much everything, as I said, you can also add rigid body, this is pretty much the usual. Right click, you can do your stuff here. But other than that, now we can move on to joint. So for joint, as I said, they help with the rigid bodies not dying. And also, by the way, if you have an invalid joint, you'll crash MMD. So keep in mind to not have invalid joints. And how you get an invalid joint is basically just clicking this and just setting it to none. This will actually crash MMD. Please don't do that. But yeah, so pretty much this is kind of like, these are basically the rigid bodies. So this is kind of like the rigid body is connected to, so like the parent rigid body. So it's kind of like, you know how bones are parented to each other? This is basically the equivalence, but for joints. So it's connected to the upper body, and then this one is connected to the hold up, actually I'm gonna show you just so you can have a better view of the joints. They're little squares, and right here, this is basically for the chest. Right here, that's the chest. There's also position, no worries about that, that's just coordinate stuff. For here, I don't really mess with this. Much. It doesn't really do much for me for some reason. So I won't worry about that. The limit parameter, this is just kind of like restricting the movement a bit more. So like, so let's say you have your hair and you want it to move more to the Z-axis, but you want less movement on the X-axis. Let's just say that, for example. This kind of helps with limiting it. And also, if let's say your chest is like, whenever you dance, your chest is like flopping all over the place. This kind of helps with kind of limiting it so it doesn't just flop all over the place. That sounded weird. But anyways, so that's very useful. And there's also bounce and spring, which if you really want like bouncy hair, like you want that smooth bouncing hair, you can have that too. This can be applied to any physics, you know, so very nice. You can also initialize the limit if you want to reset the limit. You can reset the parameter. There's also description. This kind of gives you like more explanation about the joints, which is very nice. But here's the thing also, I will say, right here, joint type, you see all of this right here? They don't work in MMD. This is actually really useless. I think they work in Miku Miku Moving, but none of these work in MMD because then they'll change the model type to a 2.1 PMX file, which is not supported in MMD. It's only 2.0. And same with the Blender MMD tools. They do not support 2.1s, which is really weird. I don't know why they added this. I think that's a part of Bullet Physics, which that's the physics engine MMD uses. So yeah, you can't use these. I'm sorry to say, you have to be stuck with this. So yeah. Of course, sad. There are some really good uses for these, but I'm sorry to say, that's just MMD. You can, once again, the usual right-click, buttons over here, and that's pretty much it for this. And now, the useless tab. Why am I saying it's useless? It's because MMD does not support soft buys at all, so I don't really have to go over this. I really don't. There's no point. I mean, you can use it for Miku Miku moving. That works, but sometimes it can actually crash Miku Miku moving, so I'm not going to go over this. I do have a text file with instructions about this, so if you guys are interested in learning about soft buys and maybe working with Miku Miku moving and soft buys, I could release a download for those instructions, but I'm not going to go over this. This is going to be a waste of time. But let's move on to, just give a quick overview of the top buttons right here, and then we'll get to PMX View, and then the final part, Transform View. Alright, so you got your file, you can have a new project, open a PMX file, save your files, save format. So if you have that 2.1 issue error, you can fix your error by going to Save Format, PMX, and clicking on 2.1 or Auto, but you can click on 2.1 and you can go to your Info tab and see PMX version 2.0. And also, by the way, the encoding here, it doesn't really matter what type. Most of the time my models would be this version, but if your model's stuck on this one, it's okay. UV number, UV number, I don't really worry about this either. If you can have that 4, I guess, but it's probably going to revert your model back to 0, so I won't worry about that. There's import export. This is mainly if you want to export as an X file, which is those DirectX files, you can, or export as a PMX file, you can go ahead. There's also import. Mainly these are used for when people assemble pre-existing model parts together. They use import and add the PMX file in there. Make sure that you clean your model. So before you import a pre-existing part, please make sure that you actually take a look at the PMX file and clean it, which I'm actually going to go over about that part. You can open a duplicate window, folder connections, the root folder, plugin folder, and all that. You can have the text CSV conversion, which is very nice. If you want to have your model in a certain format for, setting imports and all that, you can do that. PMX info is the most important option in PMX Editor. This is something that not a lot of programs actually have. Not a lot, some do. So right here, this is telling you all of the errors. This is telling you the errors of your model. So it tells you your model information, vertex, face, material, bone, all of that. It tells you all of this information. And you can filter out your errors by clicking 0 for OK, the little circle button for OK, triangle for warning, and X meaning that it's something that you have to fix or you're going to crash in MMD. So right here, this is a warning saying, there's a parent issue on bone 2. So actually no, there's 2 bones, my bad. 2 bones that have an error, and the bone numbers are 40 and 78. So we'll go to the bone tab. Go to the bone tab. Go to bone 40. And as you can see, there's a little red indicator right here, which is big no, big no. You can do in many ways. You can fix it. You can disable this. You can merge if you want, or simply, because since it's a transformation error, you can just okay, let's move it, and there you go. It should fix the issue, but sometimes you might get more issues, which is why usually for those bones like that, those little elbow bones, I usually just merge them. I'm not sure why the elbow bones are usually used, but this is just saying, like, okay, you can move around. If there's more errors, you can mess with it. Let's see here. Hold up. So we could just make sure there's no red. And there you go. There you go. That was the issue. There you go. There you go. Alright. So yeah. Now that we fixed an issue, little kid that had to rethink everything. Now you can do the same thing for 78. Basically you move it. It kind of like you just mess around with it and you just kind of like learn how to fix it. I will also be leaving in the description also a DeviantArt page that explains almost every issue on PMX Editor info. So if you are having a lot of issues and you want to know how to fix them, that link in the description should translate and explain how to fix it, or kind of give you like a method on how to fix it. So hopefully that helps. So yeah, you can do that. Make sure you have a nice clean model so it's saying it's perfectly good. So yeah. So with that, you can do edit. Now sometimes you might have some errors with your model. Sometimes you might want to be able to fix it here. Sometimes with vertex, you can repair bone, repair invalid normals, select non-reference faces, normalize, normalize some weight paint, all that. You can do material, you can join materials, show your textures, all this stuff. Your bone, you can merge, hide, offset bone, add your end bones and all that. You can have morphs, you can merge your morphs if they have the same name to avoid duplication and errors when it comes to amming and MMD. You can run plugin DLL, which most people will use when it comes to Luminous and adding those Luminous little shape keys. So you can click on this and load your plugin DLL. Or you can just put your plugin and put it in the PMX plugins folder. So there's that, which there's the plugins right here, and you can kind of find so you can go user, you can have your plugins right here. These are some plugins that either came with the English or some I added myself. So there's that. So very cool, very cool. There's View, if you want to do language switch, so if you want to be having it primarily English for all the tabs you switch to, it'll do that. Shortcut, key list, you can have that always on top, that stuff. And then information about PMX Editor, who translated it and the version that PMX Editor is in, and also the owner of PMX Editor. So thank you very much for making this program. Very nice. And that covers the PMX Editor Window part. Now we're gonna get to the PMX View part. Let's start off with your movement. So, middle mouse button allows you to pan your view. So there's them all, doing the thing. Choo 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 choo. And then we have right mouse button. So click on right button, click and drag, and rotate like this. You can also zoom in with the middle mouse scroll wheel. You can zoom in and out. You can double right click to reset your view. Left click to select. You can also use the following up here. These little buttons up here. This is very useful, especially if you're a laptop user and you don't have an external mouse. This is very useful. So there you go. And also, you can actually control the speed of your zooming and movement. So shift will make your zooming and your rotating faster, like this. But if you were to have control, your movement will be much more slower, which is very nice for when you're getting very close to the model and you're trying to edit something really tiny. This is very useful. Yes, very useful. Now over here on the bottom area, this is basically like your viewing. This views your bones, the blue button. This is your little vertices, selected vertices, your hidden invisible bones right here, your selected faces, little faces right here, your normals direction, little normals, normal selection, and then also your rigid bodies right here, rigid bodies, and then your joints. There's also X-ray mode, so if by any chance you only, so let's say, so here, I'll do an example. So let's say you're selecting your model right here, right? Let's do the shoulders. But then you rotate your model and you're like, I don't want the back part to be included. basically you click on the front button, and what it does, it'll only show vertices from your view. So you select, and if I were to rotate, the back vertices will not be selected. Very useful. So there's bone weight display right here. I don't really use this much either, but you know, when you're weight painting, that should pop up. Selected weight paint, selected weight over here. This one should show you your show hide axis plane, so if you want to enable and disable it. This one should have your tune adaptation, which is just the MMD shading right here. This one, as I showed earlier, you would have your edge enabled and disabled. There's also different viewing modes as well, like wireframe. You can also have flat for color, solid. There's also UV. There's a lot more modes that you can mess around with, and they're really helpful. Very helpful, you know, depending on what you're trying to do with your editing. So let's leave it to flat. There's wires, so in case you want to make sure that, in case your model has a really flat color and you want to make sure that the mesh is okay, you can have wireframe enabled, just wireframe shading. And you can be able to see the wireframes and make sure, you know, there's no weird dents or anything. There's also the shadows. You can enable and disable shadows if you want. And then orthographic and perspective enable, disable right here. Orthographic is usually used if you want to have a bit more accurate editing, which a lot of modelers tend to use. So it's very nice. Perspective is just your normal viewing. So that covers that part. Now up here, your options, these are just your selections basically. So if I enable bone view and I select the B key, you select your bones. But if you deselect it or have it deselected, you can't select it. And this is very useful, so that way when you are modifying or you're trying to add a part, you can be able to, you know, manipulate some certain stuff. If you want to move some vertices around, you only move the vertices and not the bones, and such and such and such. Just helps you out a lot. This is your face selection. So face selection, you can select this, you know, the red. Bones, rigid bodies, joints. Your range, these are basically selection types. So lasso tool, you can have lasso selection. You can have the circle. I don't really like this one too much, but you can use that. Triangle selection, I think that's faces basically, as you can see, face selection. Very nice. And there's much more other stuff that you can use and select. I usually stick with the box selection, but if you want lasso or something else, you can go ahead and use that. Windows, these are all of the tools, these are all of the windows that PMX has to offer. These are the good stuff right here. Good stuff. All this right here. All, yes. Now, for the display settings right here, this is basically, you know, kind of just adjusting how your display is, your lighting, if you want to see how a specific shader looks on your model. Really nice, and it also messes with the shadow. You can change your background light, your background over here to a different color. That's how I got the gray background. Environment, color, light, if you want to change the light. Reset light. You can have additional displays if you want. You can have, you could change your viewing, your camera of, you know, PMX Editor if you want. Your setting 3, basically this is kind of like your, you know, your viewing, the shading and all that if you want really high quality look, or if you want tune. This one adjusts the colors of what you're seeing with the vertices and the rigid bodies if you want custom colors. And if you want to save your settings, you can save as, save it. You can even open them if you want to open a certain setup. And all that, so that's very nice. Object management, I don't really use this much, but you can, this can help you with like, manipulating some objects, very nice. I've seen some tutorials when it comes to like trying to make models from scratch in PMX Editor, when they try to. As I said, PMX Editor is mainly editing, but it does have the capabilities of modeling from scratch, but it's much more harder in comparison with Blender. So this kind of helps out with it. Refine and masking, this kind of just mask out your materials. So if you want to edit a specific type, go ahead. The A button is for having all selected or all shown. Reverse is just, reversing. So if I have these enabled, reverse just flips them over. Then there's E to exclude. I don't use that either, but if you want, go ahead. You can do weight bone if you want weight, any, select all. Usually the select all is good if you want to like, so let's say you move your model. So a little quick error, little error thing that some people have. So some people would select the model, move it here, select all, and sometimes there'll be some invisible vertices here. You can select them, select them, so pretend I selected them. Control Z, and then Shift Delete vertices, because vertices are the only ones that need Shift Delete to be deleted, while the others just need the delete key. So that can get rid of some invisible vertices, so that's really nice to keep your model well optimized. There's even bone, body, joint if you want to have these specific views, just like for materials. Very nice if you want to kind of do some debugging and adjustments with certain stuff. Really, really nice. And you can edit, mess around with these settings. I don't really mess with these a lot either, but if you want, you can go ahead. Weight bone, you can mess with the selection. I don't really mess with that either, just mainly the materials. And sometimes these every now and then. Then there is the other, this is the object editor. So right here, people use this if they want to, let's say you don't have the external mouse right here with the laptop mouse. This can also be very useful for moving stuff. So let's show an example. So let's have the bones. Let's try moving her shoulder bones around. So you can move these around, rotate if you want, and scale them. You can, it's not just bones, it could be anything in PMX Editor, anything at all. You can have your mirror mode if you want mirror. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes I actually experience issues with this, but you can have mirror mode if you want. There's also these other options here. I don't really mess with these either. That's for more advanced editing. Now, there's even UV also. So if you want to adjust your UV, so you want to make the hair, you want to adjust the hair, so let me show you. So let's select this part of Miku's hair. Select here. And basically, you can scale outward, scale inward, move them around, to kind of manipulate it, especially if you have those, like, if you're trying to make your hair look more like, realistic hair. So if you, like, take a closer look at my hair, you can kind of see, like, how the hair strands are close together. You can try using that method to kind of do that for your character. You can even rotate your UVs, but that's pretty much it. I usually use this. There's even values if you want to have a specific number. Sometimes these actually bug out for some reason. Sometimes they bug out. But sometimes it's just because the values were too big. So you can use specific numbers if you want. I don't really use it too much unless I want an exact rotation. I usually use it for rotation, but scale, not really. But it's really up to you and your editing, UV, and then your normal. So yeah. And you have all these other things here. I don't really mess with these either. Most of the time I don't really mess with these two, or if there's additional ones, I don't really mess with the top part. But if you want, like I said, if you want to go for crazier editing, go ahead. There's also Advanced Editor. This one is actually the one which allows you to create meshes. So the knife tool basically helps with create more vertices. So let me show you. So right here, let's see, knife tool. Click and drag, and there you go. More vertices are created. Very nice. Instead of basically subdividing your model into more vertices, you could just manually make them. Very nice, very nice. Of course, it'll probably mess with your polygons, your topology, but even then, it's still pretty good, So you can disable that. You can even add if you want. So I can have this, and it can create like a cube if I want, or this is just a simple like plane mesh, but it's all weird. You can create stuff really nice. It's a little bit more tedious when it comes to like modeling stuff from scratch, but this is still pretty useful. So very nice, very nice. But let's get rid of that. You can even add to new material if you want. Cursor position, which is very nice. And then you can also use this too, if you want to undo or redo something. But you can just use Control Z to undo and Control Y to redo. So now this is weight. So weight paint, this is very important. A lot of people would use this to adjust the weight of the model. So this is basically just, weight paint is basically kind of like the movement. So you see how I'm moving my head? That's weight paint. So the head bone that I have is very heavily affected to my actual head. So that's what weight paint does. So I can select this bone right here, click on start, and then I can see some weight paint data. You can use these values here. 100 meaning that it's highly very affected, and 0 meaning it's not affected at all. And then target vertex kind of does, you know, it kind of like limits. So if you don't want to like weight paint accidentally on this arm, but you just want to like adjust this specific area, you can enable vertex, and you can basically like let's see, so like for certain areas you can kind of have it where it'll affect the areas for that bone. Same with weight. So that's just kind of like limits and kind of have a more of a target basically. Over here, this is this is something I don't really mess with because sometimes MMD itself might have issues with this. So I won't really worry about this, but this kind of affects your weight paint type a bit with the BDEF4 type weight paint. But even then, MMD would sometimes have issues with that, so I would not advise mess with this. But if you want, go ahead. All power to you. You can even have a gradient if you want. So for hair, if you want to like weight paint the hair, you can use a gradient type. Just click and drag, which is very epic. You can also hold the shift to have a more straighter line. So that's very nice. There's even blend if you want, but you know, you can stick with range for up, down, whichever direction you want. There's even the UV mode, BDEF and QDEF. I would stick with BDEF because I don't want you getting issues on MMD, because MMD has some specific standards when it comes to weight paint type, so be careful. And sometimes you might have an issue when you're doing your weight paint. Sometimes you have that weird issue where some outline looking things will just pop up from your shadow when you're having outline mode on. Yeah, that's because that's a weight paint normalized issue, which I will show you what option. But over here, this is like your parenting. So if you don't want to, you can shift select the bone and kind of like move what bone you want to weight paint. But if you don't want to do that, you can just click on this and just kind of like go down the chain for the bone. So that helps. And there's also the spray. There's a spray. I don't really use this either, but you know, you can go ahead. It kind of also helps with like, kind of add like a little bit of a gradient as well to it. But you know, I wouldn't mess. If you want to mess with it, go ahead. I don't mess with this either. I just weight paint my stuff in Blender. But yeah, and there's also one thing that not a lot of people actually talk about. Not a lot of people actually talk about this. This is actually mentioned by a friend of mine, actually. So, hold up. So let's say we have Miku like this in transform view. And let's say there is something sticking out of her arm, and you're like, what the heck is that issue? And the thing is, whenever you weight paint the models on the A pose, so it's like you have to guess where the error is, right? Well, actually, there's a better way to do that. So instead of just having your model always on the A pose and having a hard time finding the issue, you could pose the model to find the issue. So with your, outline issue or something, you can go select this plus button right here, click on the on button, give it some time, and then it'll pose and you can weight paint the error. Isn't that epic? Whoa. That's crazy. So yeah, this is really nice if you want to help. If you want help with finding the exact weight paint error. I use this so much. It's amazing. I love it. So yeah. But other than that, that's pretty much it for this though. The other settings I don't worry too much about. But it's really nice for that option to exist. Cool. Now, over here, this is selection guide. I don't really do much with this. This is mainly just to help you with selection, but you already have a good amount of selection tools. So you're perfectly good with that, but, if you want some, selections and all that, you can go ahead and do that there. And then, of course, your transform view and your sub view. As I said, sub view if you want an external window to help you with editing, go ahead, you can have that. It's pretty much the same thing as the PMX view here, just smaller and separate. There's also the transform view, which I showed you many times. This one allows you to kind of like test your model out, kind of like, move bones around, move your IKs, test out your physics by clicking the play button right here, selecting your bones over here. You can use these to help with moving things around. You can enable and disable IKs over here. You can even check, your selections over here with display panel. Very nice, very organized. You can see your display. You can initialize the pose if you want to reset pose. You can invert. So if I have this and I select here, you can basically reverse the pose right there. So if you want to convert your model from A pose to T pose for something, you can click on that, and then you can click on File and then save your model if you want. You can also reset if you want for the entire thing. Initialize, the buttons are here, same thing as these. There's even node. There's also the morph thing I showed you with the slider and the buttons and all that. Really nice. You can even click on set morph motion, morph check. You have your normal viewing over here with the orthographic and all that. You can even have send view, your pose slider if you want a certain pose, by just loading a VPD file. You can have morph slider, which kind of gives you like a different view of the morphs if you want a specific view. Physics enables the physics and all that. So basically, you can go here. This motion's by RAC. You can take the VMD, drag into PMX Editor, and you can actually click the play, click the M button, and you can actually see your model move just to test out physics. See? Very nice, very nice. Yes. And if you ever see a weird issue, you can have the pose and you can do the weight paint method, so that's really nice. There's also, like I said, you can save your model, so you can actually, you can have your model in this pose. This is also, if you want to do 3D printing of the model and you want it in a specific pose, you can file, save as a different PMX file. And if you want to do 3D printing, you can just remove the bones on Blender and then just 3D print. Or if you want it in T-pose for VR chat or VRM, you can just T-pose it in transform view, save the model file as a different PMX file, and then use that model instead. So that's very nice. You can update model as well. Pretty much these, you can load your VPD file if you want a specific pose. You can add stuff and all that. Most of these are not really most of these don't really do much. They're not really as important, but you can use them. Mode over here, you can check your FPS if you want 60 or 30, doesn't matter. Physics settings if you want some gravity and all that. That's cool. You can have play, just basically like what's over here, basically, just a little more things. And then views, you can have your settings over here, and you can adjust the lighting or even the background color, just like in the normal PMX View, and you can even save it as well. So that's really nice. I'm gonna close File Explorer now. You can also rotate the camera. You can even do the masking over here if you want to also do some debugging. If you want, that's really cool. There's the sliders over here, display anchor, all that other stuff. So, like I said, there's a couple of these options that I don't really use at all. Some of these don't really, some of these either don't really do much for your model, or, as I said, with like soft bodies and certain joint settings, they don't work at MMD at all. So, keep in mind some of these settings don't work with MMD, but, you know, you can experiment however you like. But yeah. But that covers the transform view. There's even, so if I select this little thing over here kind of shows up. So kind of like you can move it around. You can even disable if you want over here, or enable it. And sometimes, if by any chance this is like all the way over here, but you're selecting one bone, you can double click it to kind of correct it basically. So yeah. But that's pretty much transform view. Now, for the last part of this tutorial, goodness, am I Speedy Gonzalez? Anyways, we're gonna go over the last part, which is up here, and then we should be good to go. Okay, if you are still at this part of the tutorial, I am shocked of your bravery, that you're taking the time to learn all about PMX Editor. I am proud of you. My goodness, I'm so proud of you. Give yourself a round of applause if you made it this far. Anyways, right here, this is basically, this is kind of like similar to Macleod, and even Maya also has this, and I think Blender has, I'm pretty sure Blender has their own version of the setup. But they basically have like setup for like weight paint type, for the knife tool, as I mentioned, knife. UV mapping is also with the weight paint as well. And then add object, you can have that too. But yeah, I usually leave it by default, but if you want to have specific setup for it, you can use that. Very nice. For edit, you can undo, redo, selections. Over here, this is actually very important. Sometimes you might run into some errors and you might need some corrections. So right here, this is very important. So you can, you know, mirror your objects, align, copy position, set position. I mainly use mirror object. This one, basically, okay, so here, I'm gonna demonstrate actually. So, let's see here. Okay, let's see what we can mirror. Almost everything is mirrored, but for demonstration purposes, let's delete these bones. Just for the time being. So we select these bones, click edit, object, and then click on mirror object, click on yes, and it should mirror it. As long as you have the Japanese symbol for right and left, you should be able to have it mirrored very easily. Very nice. So, now you can also have vertex. You can refine your vertex over here, and you can even add edge scale. You can even create some UV maps over here, if you want. You can even join vertices as well if you wanna. If you're doing some editing and you find an unnecessary vertex, you can join. But I do have to warn you also, PMX Editor kind of sucks when it comes to joining vertices and then keeping the UV map consistent. So if you, I honestly think that maybe they should improve on this. But even then, if you're gonna be joining vertices and the weight paint gets messed up, or hold up, cut to the part where I talked about, cut the part where I said about, the vertex. So there's also vertex as well, and basically, there's refine, There's show faces, you can add object, edge scale, create UV mapping. There's also join vertex, but I do have to warn you, when it comes to UV maps, it actually really sucks at keeping the UV clean. So I would suggest, be cautious about this. But I would recommend, if you really want to join a lot of vertices and you want to keep the UV map consistent, please use Blender or any other program that knows how to do the UV join vertice thing better, because PMX Editor just messes it up a lot. There's also copy UV and deleting your vertices, which is the shift delete I was mentioning. There's also face, which you can reverse your faces, you can delete your faces, and if you're running through errors when it comes to faces and PMX info, you can delete invalid faces, same face, and overlapping faces to clean up your model. And there's also other options as well. I don't really use these a lot either, but if you are interested in these options, go ahead. You can exclude faces, select related faces, and all that. And also, expand share faces. This is basically the equivalent of Control L on Blender, where you select linked vertices, but this version is only for linked faces. So let me show you. So we're gonna see Miku. So let's select her arm here. You do Control X and it, kind of selects linked faces. So that's really nice. There's also bone as well. So you can add your bones, delete your bones, create IK bones, duplicate them, all that crazy stuff. And as you can see here, a lot of people use this to add their rigid bodies and their joints. There's even an option to create rigid body and linked joints, which this is really useful when you're trying to add physics to something. So I would recommend, if you're doing physics, add this, but if you're going to be adding like bone colliders, just stick with the normal bone tracking. So that's nice. You can even fix axes, set local axis and all that stuff, axes corrections of the bones and all that, so that's nice. There's even normals, where if you have a normal issue with, because specific shadows are looking weird or the shading looks a bit off, you can average your normals. You can normalize your normals if you're running through an error. You can even copy your normals if you want. I don't really use copying as much. I don't really use it, but if you want, you can copy and all that. That's okay. But this is kind of like affecting your geometry normals, so yeah. There's also the show non-edge. There's a morph editor, to fix and modify your morphs. There's also the UV skin, which allows you to create your UV morphs and just kind of like modify those UVs a bit. But I would actually recommend the plugin for PMX Editor called UV Editor. That one actually does a much better with editing UVs. So please make sure you use that. There's a lot of plugins that are very useful with PMX Editor, and I would recommend them. I'm pretty sure they're already in the English version of PMX Editor, and I'm not going to go through those. There are tutorials about it. But even then, they're very useful to use, so go ahead and try them out. They're very nice. There's also the weight. If you want to adjust your weight, this is, average weight, smooth weight, and all that. But here's the thing I also mentioned about an error. So if, as I said, if you're dealing with an error where there's an outline poking out of your model in a weird way, but yet when you disable outline, your model looks perfectly fine, this is basically where you normalize it. Now, these two right here, I don't know why, but these give you issues so much. I would recommend, if you're dealing with that weird issue, please normalize it to SDEF, because MMD primarily use that weight paint type. Apparently MMD does not like these two, they just act weird. I mean, it's possible to have them in MMD, but it's quite tedious and just very troublesome. There's also mirror model, which basically just flips your model, basically. It's not like the object mirror, because object mirror mirrors your selection. Mirror model just flips your model, basically. There's even a simple primitive as well. I don't really use this either, but if you do want to, add, some shapes to PMX Editor, you can. So right here, this is the sphere, your box, your plane. So if you want to add it, you can add the mesh, and you can modify it and all that. So it's very nice if you want to add some meshes to PMX Editor. So really nice. Yes. There is also the view, so if you want to adjust your display settings, which is over here, you can modify that. There's camera rotate, sub transform view. There's also multi-view mode, which is really nice if you want to have better editing, and also while you're editing, make sure that everything else is working properly with your model. So very nice. I use this a lot when it comes to making skirts. So very nice, very nice. There's split view. You can even disable multi-mode with just clicking again, or F12. Object management. Pretty much most of these are just the windows over here. That's pretty much it. However, though, there is the effect settings. Here you can actually load an effect. I'm going to choose Real Figure Shader, and I'm going to choose the one I modified. So we're going to click here, click OK, and there you go. You have a specific shader. This is really nice for debugging, and also to see if you have those weird shadow eyes that you can fix. But yeah, you can have that going on. Very nice. And they have to be the effects file type. They can't be anything else other than the effects file type. You can Google MMD effects and download them, but they have to be the shaders, not the X file. But yeah, other than that, there's also transform view over there. There's also info, which is the last thing we're going to talk about. So there's enable change navigation, free sub transform view, which we already discussed that. But there's also one more cool thing called VMD View. There's two of these modes. Honestly, I don't really see much of a difference with these two. You can just use whatever. But basically, you can do File, Open VMD, and you can load your motion there. And you can see a weird issue with Miku's physics. You see that happens a lot. A lot of stretching would happen on the first frame, but then when you just move the slider around, it just looks normal. So no worries. And then you can see Miku dance just to test your physics out. So that's really nice. And it's really nice you can also like adjust so you can, make sure to debug anything. You can, edit if you want. You can fix setting. You can also clear VMD if you want. I'm not going to do that, but you can, clear it and pick another motion. You can also, adjust the view if you want to change the lighting more and change the background color to, lighter and all that. You can even change the edge size over here, to debug. Like I said, most of this is just debugging. There's also IK to disable enable IKs. There's also tune type, anti-aliasing, shadow if you want to adjust the shadows. There's also other shadow settings, physics settings for gravity if you want to test it out, rigid body joints if you kind of want to see the physics. To make sure that there's nothing floating. That's nasty. We don't want floating stuff. Yoinks. But yeah. So we can disable that. There's also VMD list, which shows the list of motions. And then there's info, and that's pretty much it. Whew! That was a lot of explaining. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, there's also virtual axis as well, but this option doesn't really work out for me. But it's there. And there's even multi-view as well over here. So that's another shortcut there. But yeah. Well, other than that, from what I've checked, I've pretty much covered everything. Oh goodness, this has been very long recording. I apologize if I apologize if this video ends up being super long for you guys. I really apologize. But I really hope that this is very useful if you guys really want to go in depth of PMX Editor. So hopefully that helps. If I am missing anything at all, if I am missing something with this ultimate guide, please let me know what I'm missing. But do keep in mind, this is only talking about the PMX editor and the UI and trying to explain everything about it. It's not talking about specific errors. So if you do have a specific error, that's not really specifically for the tutorial. It's mainly for me to just explain to you about. But yeah, hopefully this helps. Let me know if I'm missing anything about the PMX editor UI. If you have any errors when it comes to your MMD model, that you have, whether your physics are glitched up, or you know, you're dealing with your skirt dragging away, or some error that looks very unusual, comment it down or private DM me and I will help you out, okay? But yeah. And also, it appears that the like, share, and subscribe button are all saluting at us. It's not just a subscribe button anymore, it is all of them. So we gotta make sure we salute back to them, guys, okay? But yeah. Make sure you do support the channel, though. I really appreciate it. If you want more videos like these, let me know in the comments or show your support by interacting more with this video. But yeah. I'm gonna go now, to take care of other modeling stuff, but hope it helps. And with that being said, though, I am Cadet Second Lieutenant Davali. Sayonara, my comrades and citizens, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!